Good morning again. My name is Kate Flatley, and I am the Senior Program Director here at the Incarnate Word Foundation. We are so happy to have so many of you joining us this morning for the 2025 General Grant Cycle Orientation. We will be sharing this information today in a webinar format. We are recording this presentation, and it will be made available afterwards along with the slide deck. It will be emailed out and posted on the website, so you'll be able to share it with your colleagues and also reference it if needed. There also will be time for questions at the end. However, there is a question and answer feature that's available in the webinar format. You should see that at the bottom of your screen. As we go through the presentation, if there is a question that you think of that you'd like to answer, please feel free to drop your question into that Q&A feature. My colleagues, Mary Fossage and Sarah Banks, will be monitoring that Q&A feature. They may be able to answer the question as we go along. However, when we get to the question and answer session, I think Mary may read them out just to benefit the entire group and the recording. So please utilize that feature. Here is the overview of what we will be going through at today's orientation. It should take about 25 minutes for the entire presentation, so we should have plenty of time for questions at the end. However, before we jump into the presentation, I want to introduce our Executive Director, Bridget McDermott Flood, who wants to say a few words. Bridget.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Sisters of Charity of the Incarnate Word of San Antonio, our sponsoring congregation, I'd like to welcome you to this webinar about our General Grant Cycle. But most of all, I want to thank you for all the work you're doing in our community to make St. Louis and our region a better place for all, where everyone has the opportunity to thrive and live with dignity. I'm not going to belabor the point, but I really do appreciate everything you do. And especially in these challenging times, it's more important than ever that we work together and we stay the course because people are depending on us every day. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this back over to my colleague, Kate Flatley, and let her go through the grant orientation process. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Bridget. So the first thing we like to do every year is start with a little bit of background about the foundation. We have a large group with us today, and so many of you may be familiar with the organization, but we're hoping there are some new people here. And either way, it's always good to have a refresher. We get to learn a lot about you through your applications, but we think it'd be good for you to get to know about us as well. So the Incarnate Word Foundation is sponsored by the Sisters of Charity of the Incarnate Word, a group of Catholic religious women based in San Antonio, Texas. The foundation was formed from the sale of Incarnate Word Hospital. The hospital was located at the corner of Lafayette and Grand, and the building still stands today. It's SLU's College of Public Health and Social Justice. Proceeds of the sale started the foundation to continue the mission and charisms of the sisters here in St. Louis. The charism of the sisters is that of incarnational spirituality, meaning that God is present in all we do and all the relationships we have with one another. And that really is the cornerstone of what we believe and what we try to do. We try to be relational in our work, just as the sisters have always been. We don't always get it right, but we try, and we have been trying for over 25 years. Our mission is to simply make real the healing love of Jesus Christ. And the way we achieve this is through living our values. Our values are equity, respect, compassion, inclusion, dignity, joy, and love. It is pretty unique for love to be both in our mission and the values of a foundation, but it really is at the center of what we do because it's always been at the center of what our sisters do. Love is recognizing God and others and treating them that way. Our role as the foundation is to help these values become more prevalent in our society and community by partnering with organizations that demonstrate these values. Alongside our general grant cycle, we have other projects and initiatives in the community. In 2024, we just wanted to share some highlights from that year. We were proud to collaborate with over 15 organizations to launch the Housing for Immigrant Families floor, creating emergency temporary shelter for unhoused immigrants and refugees in our area. We also supported the Every Child Education Equity Project and some of our long-term partners, including St. Joseph's Housing Initiative and Bridge of Hope, Lincoln County. We also hosted educational opportunities and convenings to help educate, unify, and collaborate with the community. Some of you may have been present at a presentation by local demographer, Dr. Ness Sandoval, sharing his research on the population shifts and trends in our region. The 2024 general grant cycle garnered more than 130 letters of intent, and we ultimately funded 50 of those organizations. In 2024, we started developing something that we're excited to announce this year. It will be launched soon. It is the Sisters of the Most Precious Blood of O'Fallon Legacy Fund at the Incarnate Word Foundation. This fund will support Catholic education, spirituality, and reconciliation. Again, this will launch in May and focus on Catholic education and organizations supporting that mission. The parameters of the funding and the exact dates for the timeline are still being finalized, but more information will be sent out in the next few weeks. So Catholic educators, please be on the lookout for this opportunity and apply there. This was mentioned in the email sent out about the orientation, but just as a reminder, if you are a Catholic school, please don't apply for the general grant cycle. Please be on the lookout for this new funding opportunity. The Incarnate Word Foundation feels very honored to be continuing the legacy of the Sisters of the Most Precious Blood of O'Fallon. They're an amazing group of women, and we're excited to steward these funds to the schools to support this important work. This work is made possible by the people in the Incarnate Word team. You already had the opportunity to meet Bridget McDermott Flood, our fearless leader, and the executive director since the inception of the foundation. We're also lucky to have Sister Helena Monahan, a sister of the Charity of the Incarnate Word, working alongside us every day. Mary Fossage is our communications director and is on this call with us today and helped create this beautiful presentation. And Sarah Banks is our program associate and will be able to assist you with any technical support questions you may have when completing this grant application. Our goals for the 2025 general grant cycle is to continue the charism of the sisters by living our mission and our values in collaboration with all of you. The organizations really working in the community to address the root causes, formulating systems changes, and helping those in need, the most vulnerable in our community. You are the ones being love in action. We are excited to launch the 2025 general grant cycle. We love this time of year because we get out from behind our desks and we get to be with all of you and learn about the good work you're doing. We value our partnerships with all of you, and we want to continue to be good and trusted partners. We have listened to your feedback, and we know that your time is valuable. So we want to be as clear and explicit about what we will and won't be funding this year. We don't want to waste your time that we know is precious if you might not receive funding. So again, in an attempt to be a good, transparent partner, we have developed funding priorities for 2025, and this is what I'll be reviewing now. First, I want to recognize the critical importance of all community service areas and sectors. This is just what has risen to the top as our funding priorities for 2025. First, we're interested in supporting organizations that are active within the Dutchtown and Gravois Park and North St. Louis communities. We've partnered with several organizations in this region for years to work with them to make an impact in this place-based support in this community. We also prioritize Catholic or faith-based organizations. Now, you do not have to be Catholic or faith-based to apply. We do fund secular organizations. We are committed more than ever to advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We are dedicated to assisting immigrant and refugees and the organizations that accompany them. We're interested in agencies that expand access to safe, affordable, and sustainable housing. We're interested in agencies serving youth and women. This could include anything from mother and baby programs to after school or summer programming to domestic violence shelters or anywhere in between. We're interested in organizations improving economic mobility and wealth building in our region, and those working to alleviate food insecurity. This could mean anything from community farms to food pantries. But you'll notice that all these funding priorities are in direct service to our community. And most importantly, these are organizations, the most important thing, is that an organization aligns with our mission and our values. Again, we want to acknowledge the vital role that all nonprofits and community service agencies play in our region. We are simply unable to fund them all, and other sectors will be lower priorities this general grant cycle. Again, this year in our LOI, there'll be a checkbox question asking about your alignment to these priority sectors. This is another attempt for us to be as transparent and honest with you and your colleagues about our priorities. So please check all the sectors that apply. There will also be non-eligible categories again this year. Again, we want to be direct and not waste your time because we know how valuable it is. The non-eligible sectors are advocacy or convening organizations, animal welfare, charter and public schools, disease, illness, and disability-specific health interventions, endowments and capital campaigns, hospital and clinical care facilities, large cultural organizations. This would include things like the Art Museum, Repertory Theater, History Museum, local affiliates or branches of national organizations, refunding or regranting programs, universities and colleges, and Veterans Affairs organizations. What you may notice that is not listed here that was a disqualifier for many in last year's general grant cycle was a large operating budget. Again, attempting our best to listen to feedback and looming concerns about federal budget cuts and what that will do to agencies' operating budget, we've taken out that restriction this year. However, please note, an organization with an annual operating budget below $100,000 or above $1.5 million may be less likely to receive funding through a general grant cycle. This is clearly written in the application where we ask for your operating budget. So you will see that right away on the LOI. If you have any questions about these sectors and your eligibility, about your specific agency, please feel free to reach out to me after this presentation. I'm happy to have a conversation with anyone. We want to be relational again and to learn about the good work going on in the community, even if we can't fund your project. There are other requirements for our general grant cycle. First, I want to state, and hopefully you're all aware, that our max award is $10,000. Typically, our grants range anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000, with an average being $5,000 to $7,000. We fund general operating support. You do not need to be program specific or parcel out what this money will fund. For example, you don't need to say it will fund 3 soccer balls and 5 jump ropes for your after school program, or that it will cover the cost of a social worker's salary every second Tuesday for 3 hours. Being relational in this partnership with you, we want to trust you. And we trust that you know how to spend this money. So this is general operating for however you need this support. That doesn't mean we don't want to know about your programs. Please tell us about those programs. That helps us to get to know you and your work, but you don't need to be that specific about what this funding is going to cover. Other requirements, again, you need to connect to our values and our sisters' view of the world, have strong community partners, and work hand in hand with the community you're serving and not parachute in. Our work is focused in the St. Louis metro area, including East St. Louis. However, we can fund throughout the state. So if you have a good idea and are in a rural area, please submit an application. But we want to be honest that as of late, most of our funding has been focused in the St. Louis metro region. You are required to hold a 501c3 status. However, if you are a new agency or a smaller agency and don't have that status yet, we will accept a fiscal sponsor, but we will need proof of that relationship, and we will need the same documentation that we require of all applicants, which includes a W-9. This is a short form downloadable from the IRS website, and we need this to cut a check, which again is why we're all here. We also require a 2024 Form 990. This is what you would have submitted to the IRS in 2024. If you have an extension for this, that's okay, but we will also need paperwork stating that. We will also need an IRS federal letter of determination. Please do not submit your Missouri federal tax letter. This is not the same thing. This is a federal letter stating that you're a 501c3. For Catholic organizations, this would be a letter from the U.S. Catholic Bishops' Conference. Other religious organizations may have something similar through a larger organization too. But again, we just want to stress that this is a federal letter. Without these 3 things, we will not be able to review your final application. These won't be required unless you're invited to submit a full application. These won't be required in the LOI. The last requirement is that we ask if you have been funded by our foundation for 3 consecutive years, that you take a year off to give another agency a chance. Again, it needs to be consecutive. So if you took 2024 off, welcome back. We're happy to have you. But if you've been funded for 3 years, please sit this one out so we can meet new agencies and learn about the work you're doing. Again, you should be able to see this funding history in your Foundant profile, although myself or Sarah would be happy to help you track this information if you're not sure how to check that. Speaking of Foundant, Foundant is the system that we use to manage our grant making. Our applications are all housed in this system, and each agency and person is asked to have a login to access this. Our LOI application is now ready and in the Foundant system. It will open at noon today following this presentation. If you do not have if you do not have a login, this is the page that you would go to create one. If you do have one, or if you think your organization has one, but you're having trouble accessing that, either Sarah or myself will be able to help you do that as well. We encourage you to try to log on as soon as possible. The sooner you do that, the less trouble you'll have closer to the due date. We always want to make sure that you can get into Foundant and get what you need as early as possible. We do utilize a two-step application process. The letter of intent opens today, and then will be due Friday, May 23rd, 2025. We do have a PDF of this application. Again, this was feedback we heard from our funded partners that they'd like to be able to view the application before logging in actually to Foundant. So we will make a link of that available on our website so you can view what those questions will look like. However, please note that the application needs to still be submitted through our system for tracking purposes. So our LOI is simple and short. Our hope is always that it's not too much work for anyone. Again, I want to encourage you to log on as soon as possible to make sure you have access and to submit that LOI early. We don't want to field calls at 3 p.m. the day the application is due because of computer problems. And I especially want to stress this because Friday, May 23rd, is the Friday before Memorial Day weekend. And I think the last thing anyone wants to worry about is hitting submit on an application right before leaving for a long holiday weekend. Once the LOI is submitted, we'll begin our review process the following month to narrow down the agencies that are invited to submit a full application. Then this will go out the week of on July 8th. Most years, this has been 45 to 50 organizations invited to submit a full application. If you are invited, please, please, please submit an application because there is a high likelihood that you will get funding. Every year, it's a little frustrating when we invite an organization and their application isn't turned in. It's honestly frustrating because that means we can't give you funding, but also because it took a spot from another worthy organization that may have been able to receive funding. The full application will be due on Friday, July 25th. The application is set up in the same manner as it was last year, where questions that were answered on the LOI will pre-populate or auto-generate directly into the application to hopefully save you time and reduce any duplicative efforts. Again, we're trying to keep it simple and accessible. The application will ask you for those 3 documents I mentioned earlier, the W-9, the 2024 Form 990, and the federal letter of determination, and get into some more in-depth questions about financials. Once the full application invites go out, we will begin the site visits. These will start in July and maybe go through August. In the past, we've done these both in person and on Zoom. However, we really prefer these in person because, again, we like to be relational and we like to be with all of you and see the places you're working, and in some cases, even get the opportunity to meet the people you serve. So please make sure your emails are up to date and Foundant because that's how we communicate with you through the contact person in your database. So please make sure everything's up to date. Once the site visits are done and we received the application, we meet with our board to make recommendations and get their approval. And then we will make the grant announcements This will be done through email notification, and that's when the fund can begin. We host an awards banquet at Forest Park Golf Club, and Bridget gets to play Oprah or Santa Claus and give everyone a check. But really, this is just a celebration of all of you. It's a chance for us to get together in community and honor the work that you're doing for our region and for our brothers and sisters in need. We're anticipating that this breakfast will be in early November. You might see on this timeline a date of 2027, which could seem a little crazy, but that's our evaluation. It will take place in 2027, and I do want to talk to you about it so you know what it looks like. For the last several years, we've adopted a focus group evaluation model, hosting 5 to 7 focus groups with 8 to 10 agencies per session, with one person representing each organization. We have had great conversation and feedback from these focus groups, feedback that continues to inform our work and the way we do things, much of which I've shared with you today during this webinar. These focus groups have also allowed agencies to connect and brainstorm and collaborate in ways that we couldn't have imagined. It's also allowed us to learn directly from you, the subject matter experts that are in the field every day. It has strengthened relationships for all involved. Can't tell you how much we value these focus groups. It's also saved organizations from writing lengthy reports, and it saved us from reading lengthy reports. So the timeline for this is, again, we would fund these awards or give funding at the end of 2025 with the expectation that the money would be spent in 2026 for all of us to get back together and review in early 2027, usually in February. We will remind you along the way. We know February 2027 is far, but that is also why it's important to keep your contact information updated and found in, because that is the information we will use. We also know people leave organizations and contacts change. So we want to recommend that you think about creating a generic email at your organization, something like grants@yourorg.com, that multiple people check so nothing slips through the cracks. Because if you do not attend a focus group evaluation, your organization won't be eligible for funding in the future. But again, don't worry, we will remind you along the way. Before I jump into questions, I do want to point you to our landing page for information and resources. This is our website. This is the best way to access our grant portal. This is also where this recording and our slide deck that we're sharing today will be, along with that PDF of the LOI application that I mentioned. Again, though, this is just a PDF of what the questions look like. That LOI application will need to be completed and submitted in the Foundant portal, the Foundant system. I also want to give a few final reminders. Log in as soon as possible to ensure you have access to Foundant. We are here to help you get into that system, but the sooner you do it, the better. Please pay attention to due dates. Submitting early is always better. And please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask questions. We want to connect, and we are here to help. Here is my contact information along with Sarah's. We are here to answer any questions you may have, to have a conversation, to get you into that grant portal. We love the general grant cycle. We love to get out and learn about all the good work you are doing and to be with all of you. We are excited to learn more about what is happening in our region and are looking forward to getting your applications. So I've talked enough. I'm going to take a drink and I'm going to turn it to one last slide. This is a quote from one of our foundresses: "A goal for God and a heart for the neighbors I'm just going to leave this up as we start the question and answer. And turn it over to Mary to see if any has come in.
Hello. Yes, we have had a couple of questions come in and I have been answering them, typing out the answer. So the first one was, is it okay if my organization doesn't yet have our 2024 990? Could we submit a 2023 990 as well as the 23-24 audit? And I answered yes, so long as that extension letter from the IRS is included with your paperwork. So we just want to make sure that we have the most current paperwork that you have filed and or an extension knowing that you are working on it. And then the next question was, does a 2025 recipient need to wait until after the 2027 focus group to reapply? And I said, no, you can reapply each year. It's just that that is the lead time for spending and then focus group. So Kate, I will turn the next couple of, let's see. Will this address be sent to today's participants? The link isn't clickable. Yes, of course it will be. We will send out the PDF and a link to the landing page as well as live links to the grant portal. Okay, Kate, if you are a program that serves charter and public schools in the after-school program, does that qualify even though you are working with the charter and public schools?
I would say submit an application so we can learn more about you. I would say submit an application so we can learn more about you. That would be great for us. And I'm happy to have a conversation to learn more about the organization if you want to do that before filling out the application. But if you are a separate 501c3 that serves charter schools, I think that would be different. We've got a little guy at home with Mary. But then that would be different, and I think you would qualify for. But so yeah, go ahead and submit an application. But I'm also happy to have a conversation with you too, if you want to set up a time to do that.
Thank you. Our next one is, can you provide further clarification or examples of advocacy or convening organizations that aren't eligible for funding?
Sure. So we are a supporting organization of a public charity. So we do not fund in the advocacy space. And so the way we define that is organizations that are opting for or against promoting any legislation. So, or getting groups together to organize in a manner of doing that. So, and we know there are, and we do that again because we're a supporting organization of a public charity, and also because we know there's a lot of other foundations that are supporting that work. And so we're just stepping back and we are not doing that. So there's a lot of other good foundations that are doing that, but we do not fund advocacy.
Thank you, Kate.
Mommy, I don't like this
Just one comment. Thanks. The presentation has been helpful and well organized.
Mommy, I don't like this level.
Okay, the next question is, does the 100,000 minimum budget include in-kind donations?
The 100,000, sorry, I'm thinking about this.
Mommy,
So
I
the
don't
minimum
like
budget,
this
right?
level.
So organizations are eligible for funding if their operating budget is over 100,000 or under 1.5 million. I shouldn't say eligible, but have preferential review for those organizations. This person is asking if in-kind donations, so the donations of people's time,
This level.
Yeah.
would count toward that operating budget.
It's really how you design your operating budget. You know, we don't have a template for how your operating budget should look, I guess is part of it. And again, because it's not as hard or strict parameters this year, we are trying to make it a little bit more gray. I would say it's however you and your board design that operating budget. If you put gifts in kind into that operating budget as that overall that way, I would say It's however you and your board have determined that, if that makes sense. But again, it's not a, we are hoping to not use it as an exclusionary tactic this year. So I would say you could submit it. And I apologize, Mary,
Thank
I
you.
can't see the questions for some reason.
It's okay.
Otherwise, I could try to read them as well.
I've got them up. And then thank you for answering that one. For the next, this is actually two questions very similar about organizations that are under the umbrella of a church, 501c3, and the church doesn't file a 990. Is there something else that they can submit? So Kate did cover this earlier in the presentation. For Catholic churches or entities that are listed in the official Catholic directory, you will have a letter from the U.S. Conference of Bishops, or you can request a letter. And then we also ask that you send a scan of your page in the official Catholic directory. So that is how the Catholic Church notes their not-for-profit status and their, I guess, waiver to file a 990. Other churches may have similar processes, maybe a letter from your bishop or the sponsoring organization, or even from the IRS determining that you are a designated a religious not-for-profit and that you are not required to file a 990.
And we are going to work on our application this year to make that really easy and accessible, because I know that's been a little tricky in years past. So we have a note to already modify that to make that hopefully super clear. I do, Mary, I can see. So this is, oh, I think we just deleted Jeff's email, Jeff's question. And what that was,
Oh, sorry. Another question
no.
for an organization that does parish-based education work. Would that be best to submit, and advocacy, would that be best to submit through the O'Fallon legacy?
Jeff, I think, can we find a time to talk to learn more exactly about what the parish-based work is? Because the grant, again, we're finalizing the parameters of what the funding of that legacy grant is going to look like. And we do have an and something we're calling an enrichment track for those organizations that support Catholic education that might not be schools, but come in and do support work with the schools. So dependent on what your organization is, yes, you could maybe be a better fit there. So let's find a time to talk, and so I can learn more about what exactly your agency is, and we can figure out the best place for you to apply. Muriel, you said if your grant will come to fruition in 2026, do you need to use that year's budget or the current year's budget? We need to just use this year's budget, your 2025 budget. Yes, and we know people's fiscal years are different. So we're just trying to get a good idea of what your current picture looks like. So again, we trust you. So if your fiscal year, if you want to submit, because also that could change, your fiscal year could change kind of in the middle of when the grant application is due. So if you run a fiscal year that's July 1st to June 30th, and our grant application is due in the middle of July or at the end of July, that could look a little different. But that's when your budget, the more detailed financial picture will be if you are invited to submit that full grant application. But yes, dependent, we just trust you to submit the most current of what you have. Hopefully that answers that. No, you don't have to have a minimum budget of $100,000 to apply, but we are saying that those organizations that have a minimum of $100,000 to a maximum of 1.5 are going to be given a little priority. We have found just in our over 25 years of experience that those organizations are kind of, those mid-sized organizations are the ones that we've had really great impact and partnership with. Yeah.
Kate, can you
Zarina,
define disability health interventions more clearly?
yeah. So Zarina, I'm reading your question, and I would say that you probably are not a good fit. I think you're doing amazing work, but serving, working with children with hearing loss, we have just not funded in that space in several years. So we don't fund that, like an organization like Paraquad, we wouldn't fund. I'm trying to think of other examples. We have just, those are one of the things that our board and grant review committee have determined there are others funding in that space, and we've decided not to fund. Not that we don't love and believe and trust in the good work you're doing, we just don't fund in that space. Lisa asked, do we apply as an organization for one grant disbursement, or can we submit an application for each program within our organization? No, you just apply for your overall grant, or excuse me, for your overall organization. We do not fund program specific. We fund general operating for your organization overall. So, we would only fund your organization once. So we would love to hear about your programs that you're doing, but we would just fund general operating overall.
And that is the list of the questions that I see in the open Q&A.
Yeah, I think that's the last I have too. I do want to maybe just hang out for a few more minutes in case anybody has any other questions. I'm going to go back if my computer lets me go back a slide or two. Oh. Huh. Oh, Mary, are you in control? Is that why? Huh. I'm just going to put up my contact information. Let's see, make it a little bigger at least. Apologize. Best laid plans. This is not what I wanted.
It's okay. While you're pulling up your contact information, we just had another clarifying question about does the $100,000 minimum budget include in-kind donations? And I believe Kate's answer to that was, it is your budget. It is your budget narrative. If, you are under $100,000 without, the in-kind donations of people's time and services, and adding those puts it over $100,000. You're welcome to include that in the narrative. But again, the budget parameters this year are not as tightly held as they were in previous years, because we know that federal funding is a very big question mark for everyone right now. And so these are just the parameters inside which we're going to give the most consideration. But we will definitely look at organizations who have their budgets lower than $100,000 and even more than $1.5 million.
Thank you, Mary. That was said very well. I appreciate it. So again, I just wanted to put my contact information up on the screen along with Sarah's. Mary is also here to answer any questions you may have. We are excited to launch the general grant cycle again this year. Please look for it. It'll go live at noon, but we will be here to answer any questions along the way, to help with logins, to offer any explanation or assistance that you may need. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Just because we are stopping this webinar does not mean we are stopping the conversation. So thank you so much for taking time from your Friday to be here. And we look forward to learning more about the good work you are doing. And as Bridget said, thank you for the good work you're doing to serve our community. I'm going to stop the recording. Oh, shoot. Did it?